Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change, and we're on to video number 2. And I just wanted to add a few thoughts to my rant from the last video. You know, in the question of, are people allowed to think dumb thoughts, or are people allowed to think certain things or say certain things? I think the rhetoric goes both ways for left and right, right? There's, right now, you know, the conspiracy theory people are, you know, generally shoved into the right, but not necessarily always the case. I'm definitely a left-leaning conspiracy theorist, but I was just reading on Facebook today about somebody saying, you know, the term conspiracy theory is actually a conspiracy, right? It was supposedly put out there by the CIA, it was developed by the CIA, it was utilized by the CIA to discredit people who were questioning things that were going on, right? And what a perfect way to control people's minds, right? That's thought control 101 right there. Like, you know, if you say like, I don't believe this story about, they're telling me about what's going on here, and you know, now the left is just, you know, crazy rabid with calling everybody conspiracy theorists about things that, you know, why not question those things? It is not, on that particular level, it is not stupid, nor is it dumb. On, you know, conspiracy theorists can be a little bit goofball, definitely, on some, you know, if you get everybody going like, I don't believe it, you know, they're just trying to do stuff to us. I know I'm totally stereotyping the conspiracy theorists right now. You know, you get a lot of people that are just like, you know, just skeptical on not a very high level. Just being skeptical of those in power. But I think that it's, you know, it's a reasonable thing to be. And that it's a reasonable thing to question what you are told. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Where is the line of free speech and free thought? And is there one? And does it help us to allow thoughts or speech that some may denote to be hurtful or not evolved, or maybe taking people away from the actual issue? Have you all ever heard the term sea lioning? I'm going to describe this term to you now, but I see this all the time. It actually happens with trolls all the time. Sea lioning is a type of trolling or harassment which consists of pursuing people with persistent requests for evidence or repeated questions. The harasser uses this tactic, also uses fake civility so as to discredit their target. And that's, I see that happening all the time. And I've actually been sea lioned in real life, like actually had somebody in front of my face, not on the internet, harassing me with questions that they didn't really want an answer to. That's called sea lioning. Moving on. So I want to read this article from Darja Mail. I think it was from yesterday, 2 days ago, June 4th. As glacier-fed rivers disappear, 1/6 of global population is at risk. A recent University of Alberta-led project, the 2018 State of the Mountains Report, has sounded the alarm bell of how the rapid loss of glacial coverage in Canada's mountains is causing rivers to disappear. One of the examples cited in the report is how the Slims River, Aiaichu, I'm not even pronouncing that right, experienced a piracy event in southwestern Yukon. During the spring melt of 2016, the Slims River, one of the primary water sources of Kluane Lake, dried up after the Kaskawulsh Glacier receded so much that its dwindling meltwater started to flow in a completely different direction. Near the end of that summer, Kluane Lake was a full meter lower than its previous record low level. This is one stark example of a very big drainage system that utterly and permanently recognized itself in a single season, University of Alberta mountain historian Zach Robinson told phys.org. Kluane Lake is a massive lake that isn't being fed any longer and is seeing its levels dropping. What does that do to the ecosystem and the communities on that lake that depend on that water? Given that more than 1/6 of the entire global population lives in basins of glacier-fed rivers and depends heavily upon them for water for drinking and irrigation, this report is in effect sounding a global alarm bell. Change like nothing that has happened in the geological past. Mountain glaciers are vanishing so fast due to human-caused climate disruptions that it isn't just scientists in Canada who are sounding the alarm. The rate of change that we see in the moment, recorded most directly and visibly by mountain glaciers, is way, way faster than it was at the end of the Ice Age. George Schaefer of Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory told Earth Institute's State of the Planet. What we have seen over the last 150 years all over the planet is that these mountain glaciers record a retreat corresponding to 1 to 1.5 sea warming over 150 years, with the biggest part of that retreat happening over the last decade. The speed with which these glaciers are retreating has exponentially speeded up. And if you compare the rate of change, nothing ever happened like that in the geological past. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has estimated that glaciers around the world, not including Antarctica and Greenland, could shrink up to 85% of the planet warms much more. Already, 82% of all glaciers in Western China have shrunk. Glacier National Park in Montana, which used to have 150 glaciers in 1850, today has only 25, and those are on their way out as well. Glaciologists have already predicted that the Rocky Mountains in both the US and Canada will lose a staggering 80% of all their glaciated terrain over just the next 50 years. Scientists are alarmed by both the worsening trend of glacial loss, as well as its resulting impact on fundamental water sources for ecological systems and humans alike. The stored legacy of water and glaciers is something we've depended on to feed the big mountain rivers that spread out across the prairies, or the salmon rivers on the West Coast, or feed the Arctic Ocean. Mountain ecology researcher David Hick told phys.org. That's going to change. And that's it for that article, very short and to the point. Another from Truth Out from yesterday: plastic tsunamis threaten coast in Latin America. Rio de Janeiro. Although Latin America produces just 5% of the world's plastic, it imports billions of tons annually for the use of all kinds of products, some of which end up in the sea as garbage. It thus contributes to this kind of artificial tsunami that threatens the biodiversity of the oceans, where 13 million tons of waste, mostly disposable plastics, are dumped each year at a global level, according to UN Environment, enough to wrap around the Earth 4 times. The impact is such that it also affects human health, as this resistant waste enters the food chain and has led the United Nations to declare Beat Plastic Pollution as the theme for this year's World Environment Day on June 5th. Did I know it was World Environment Day on June 5th? I don't think I did. Favored by a 3,000-kilometer coastline on the Pacific Ocean with one of the world's most nutrient-rich waters, Peru was one of the first Latin American countries to join the Clean Seas campaign launched a year ago by UN Environment. The global campaign aims to eliminate by 2022 the main sources of the marine debris, which can remain in the ecosystem for 500 years. There are 5 identified islands of plastic rubbish in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans, one of them between Chile and Peru. We have witnessed firsthand the serious impacts of different types of waste, including plastic in our seas, said Ursula Carrascal, project coordinator for the Institute of the Protection of the Environment, VIDA, in Peru. For 20 years, the organization has been leading a campaign to clean up beaches and coastline in this Andean country, involving all sectors of society. According to Carrascal, the problem is exacerbated when the country suffers additional damage caused by natural disasters, such as the La Nina phenomenon that in 2017 caused flooding and the shifting of tons of waste accumulated on riverbanks. Marquez Beach in Callao was literally covered in garbage for 3 kilometers. Many beaches are now gone. Fishing boats and artisanal fishermen are affected by the damage of their nets or engines caused by plastic, she told IPS from Lima. The country, according to the Environment Ministry, generates 6.8 million tons of solid waste. Lima and the neighboring port city of Callao alone generate an estimated 3 million tons per year. Of that total, 53% is organic waste. And in second place comes plastic, according to accounting for 11%, percentage in line with the world average. In fact, half of the 6,000 tons of marine debris collected by VIDA since 1998 with support from 200,000 volunteers is plastic. There is a strong concern about the risk in the field of food safety due to the plastic accidentally ingested by fish, Carrascal said. The Governmental Marine Institute of Peru has been studying the impact of microplastic less than 5 millimeters long on Peruvian beaches and in the digestive tract of fish for years. A 2017 report found 473 plastic fragments per square meter on a beach in Callao. The British Ellen MacArthur Foundation, dedicated to promoting the circular economy, just thinking about circles in my brain, based on the reduction of both new materials and waste to create loops of recycling, warns that by 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean, and reminds us that all marine life eats this waste. One of the consequences, says scientists at Ghent University in Belgium, is that when you eat fish and seafood, you ingest up to 11,000 tiny pieces of plastic, a material most commonly derived from petrochemicals, every year. In Brazil, a country with more than 9,000 kilometers of coastline on the Atlantic Ocean, a marine aquarium was inaugurated in October 2016 in Rio de Janeiro. Aqua Rio, which promotes environmental education and scientific research or biodiversity conservation, is the institution with which the Clean Seas campaign was launched. Plastic discarded improperly on beaches, rivers, and the sewers ended up in the sea and causes the death of thousands of marine animals every year. Drinking straws, cigarette butts, caps, plastic bags, improperly discarded represent the highest percentage of the environmentally hazardous materials for marine wildlife, Director Marcelo Sisbilman told IPS. The remains of nets, fishing lines, ropes, and plastic bags abandoned in the sea remain in the environment for many years due to their low biodegradability, and end up injuring or killing countless animals that end up entangled and die by asphyxiation or starvation, added the marine biologist. To raise awareness among children about the silent killing at sea, the aquarium uses the image of mermaids dying from the ingestion of plastic. This happens in reality in the oceans to fish, birds, seals, turtles, and dolphins that confuse floating plastic waste with octopuses, squid, jellyfish, and other species that they eat. Dolphins have been found with their stomachs full of city trash. Cigarette butts, the most widely collected item in all beach cleanup campaigns, have caused the death of animals that swallow them, mistaking them for fish eggs, Spillman said. In addition, he noted, a plastic bag drifting at sea is easily mistaken for a jellyfish, which is food for several species of sea turtles, which as a result can die from asphyxiation. According to experts in Brazil and other Latin American countries, the problem is combated with isolated initiatives such as the banning of plastic bags in supermarkets, when what is needed is a broader change in the model of plastic production and consumption. But some things have started to be done. In Peru, for example, VIDA has coordinated actions with the waste management industry to promote the circular economy model through recycling chains with the waste collected in coastal cleanups throughout the country. This work has been carried out not only with large industry, but also with small and medium-sized enterprises and the national movement of recyclers in Peru. Greater efforts and investment in recycling technology are needed to solve the plastic problem. In Peru, much of the plastic waste collected, although it could be 100% recycled, is not recycled because there are no recycling plants due to lack of knowledge or lack of adequate technology, Carrasquel said. In his opinion, great progress is being made in the separation of waste from primary sources, but the cycle ends when the waste ends, again in the landfill. The Peruvian model of waste management and marine ecosystem has been used as a reference point in other countries of the Southeast Pacific, including Chile, Ecuador, Colombia, and Panama. That is the end of that article. Plastic, plastic everywhere. And the best way is to not even make it to begin with. But that is another conversation. So here's a bit of technotopia. Fairly ridiculous. Want to halt global warming and raise living standards? Get efficient. Yeah, so I don't know if I even want to read this. I mean, it's all about, you know, we're going to get really efficient and save the world. Maybe. Well, I'll read it anyways. See what you guys think. Some people hold the mistaken idea that the only way to solve climate change is to go back to the Stone Age style of living, maybe Bronze Age if we're careful. While that's not true, big ass statement right there, describing the necessary changes to our energy system can leave you imagining that we need an all-out moonshot or several. There has been criticism of whether the scenarios that limit global warming to 2C are plausible, given that they rely on large-scale active removal of CO2 from the atmosphere. But an interesting new scenario published this week shows that even greater climate progress can be achieved without a single carbon capture plant, all while removing the global standard of living. Improving the global standard of living. The key to the new plan is efficiency, which, you know, sure, it's helpful on some level, but buying all the new stuff that's more efficient creates a certain amount of waste. I don't think they're taking that into account here. The 2015 Paris Agreement affirmed the international intent to limit global warming to 2C and added a new goal to stay under 1.5C, but accomplishing this is increasingly unlikely without drastic change in emission trends. While improving efficiency has always been an important part of the puzzle, a study led by Arnulf Grubler of the International Institute of Applied Systems Analysis shows just how far you can take it if you really dig into what it means to be efficient. Their answer is that it can get you to 1.5C. Living standards up, energy down. Here's what this idealized, smarter, more efficient world would look like by 2050. The general themes are electrification of everything possible, more renewable energy, including more small-scale systems like home solar panels, much less energy wasted by devices and homes, expanding the sharing economy, and continuing to go digital. You may not realize it, but the majority of energy is lost as waste heat before it can do anything we care about. Between minimizing the losses and getting more value out of the end products, huge reductions in total energy use are possible. The researchers emphasize that this scenario results in similar or improved standards of living compared to scenarios of higher emissions. They also focus on accelerating trends we've already seen rather than more speculative changes in energy use. The global average amount of per person living space rises to current Northern Hemisphere average, for example, representing massive progress in the South, but efficient construction and retrofitting drives total home energy use down. Access to consumer devices and appliances goes up around the world, but efficiency gains lower the total energy use. Here, the researchers highlight an interesting way to look at smartphones, incredibly efficient replacements for a range of devices. A capable phone can be a camera, radio, alarm clock, GPS navigator, and even TV. Music recording system, et cetera, et cetera. TV, that means that you could buy and operate a phone instead of all those things, accessing the same lifestyle with a fraction of the energy use. In the transportation sector, the scenario sees a widespread switch to electric vehicles, increases in public transport and other forms of shared mobility. Think of your favorite ride-sharing app, and some substitution of virtual presence for travel. Again, access to transportation improves a little in the northern hemisphere and a lot in the southern hemisphere, but the total energy shrinks. Industry also gets more efficient, using about 20% less energy than it does now. That's largely due to reducing waste and losses, but there's another notable trend. Demand for raw materials goes down as we get a little more value out of the things we produce. Finally, food supply improves as the global population grows 20%. One of the forms of CO2 removal relied on in other scenarios is growing of biofuel crops to be burned in plants that capture CO2 emissions and injecting that in the ground. Oh my God, okay. Gone off the rails. Growing biofuel crops competes with food crops for land, though, so excluding biofuels makes it easier to grow enough food. In this scenario, it even allows some cropland to be reforested, which itself removes CO2 from the atmosphere. Okay. Highly theoretical, this whole thing is. In total, taking efficiency this far reduces global energy use to just 60% of what we use today. Stop calling me. As a result, greenhouse gas emissions fall quickly enough in this scenario to put us on track for about 1.5 C warming, which is far better than the 3+ degrees current emissions pledges would get us to, 3+ degrees. In addition to improved access to many services and reduced climate impacts, the model obviously comes with sizable environmental health benefits like improved air quality. Okie dokie. Certainly potential roadblocks to that rosy outcome. A car with improved fuel efficiency, for example, can often make a person drive more as they have gas money to spare. It's a water treading conundrum known as the rebound effect that the researchers acknowledge could eat into their results. But they point out that demand for many things could be nearly maxed out, citing the falling per person electricity use in California and a lower percentage of younger Americans getting driver's license. They also know that we're not entirely helpless in the face of the rebound effect. Governments can apply tax policies that affect demand, for example. There is also no insight into the economic ramifications of a more efficient world. More efficient use, including sharing of products, likely hurts the revenue of manufacturers unless they can adapt their business model. Lower demand for raw materials would affect prices in extraction industries. It's not obvious how all these trends would shake out. At least in principle, though, the study shows that aiming for a smarter, more efficient world has the potential to help write a story with a much happier ending than some of the other drafts we've seen. The standard of living many people currently enjoy can be sustained with considerably less energy than we're currently fueling it with, making it considerably more sustainable. How's that for some hopium? Yeah. I think all roads lead to negating growth capitalism. I mean, there's just no way around that. You can't keep growing the economy and have anything that looks like sustainability. Infinite growth on a finite planet cannot happen. We need to have, steady state. Even steady state growth can't happen on a finite planet. We have to have some kind of sustainability or leveling off of resource extraction and consumption. And all of that is leading to my next article from The Guardian. Carbon bubble could spark global financial crisis, study warns. Advances in clean energy expected to cause a sudden drop in demand for fuels, leaving companies with trillions in stranded assets. Plunging prices for renewable energy and rapidly increasing investment in low-carbon technologies could leave fossil fuel companies with trillions in stranded assets and spark a global financial crisis, a new study has found. A sudden drop in demand for fossil fuels before 2035 is likely, according to the study, given the current global investments and economic advantages in low-carbon transition. The existence of a carbon bubble, assets in fossil fuels that are currently overvalued because in the medium and long term, the world will have to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions has long been proposed by academics, activists, and investors. The new study published on Monday in the journal Nature Climate Change shows that a sharp slump in the value of fossil fuels would cause this bubble to burst. It posits that such a slump is likely before 2035 based on current patterns of energy use. Crucially, the findings suggest that a rapid decline in fossil fuel demand is no longer dependent on stronger policies and actions from the governments around the world. Instead, the authors' detailed simulations found that demand drop would take place if major nations undertake no new climate policies or reverse some previous commitments. See United States. This is because advances in technologies for energy efficient and renewable power and the accompanying drop in their price have made low carbon energy much more economically and technically attractive. Dr. Jean-Francois Mercure, the lead author from Radboud and Cambridge University, told The Guardian, this is happening already. We have observed the data and made projections from there. With more policies from governments, this would happen faster. But without strong climate policies, it is already happening. To some degree, at least, you can't stop it. But if people stop putting funds now in fossil fuels, they may at least limit their losses. By moving to a lower carbon footing, companies and investors could take advantage of the transition that is occurring. Rather than trying to fight the growing trend, Mercure said fossil fuel companies were likely to fight among each other for the remaining market rather than have a strong impact on renewable energy businesses. Professor Jorge Vinuelas, co-author, said, contrary to investor expectations, the stranding of fossil fuel assets may happen even without new climate policies. Individual nations cannot avoid the situation by ignoring the Paris Agreement or burying their heads in coal or tar sands. However, Mercure also warned that the transition was happening too slowly to stave off the worst effects of climate change. Although the trajectory towards a low-carbon economy would continue, to keep within 2C above pre-industrial levels, the limits set under the Paris Agreement would require much stronger government action and new policies. That could also help investors by pointing the way to deflation of the carbon bubble before they make investments in fossil fuel assets. The paper supports the view of some policy and investment experts that economics and technology are now driving action on climate change, where before impetus was all from policymakers. Former UN climate chief Christiana Figueres told The Guardian a year after Donald Trump announced the withdrawal from the US from the Paris Agreement, there is a big difference between the economics of climate change and the politics of climate change. Is Trump going to stop that advance by business towards low carbon technologies? I don't think so. Frédéric Samama of Europe's biggest asset manager, Amundi, also believes investors have reached a tipping point in relation to taking action on greenhouse gases through their portfolio management. He told Bloomberg last month that until recently, the question of climate change was not on their radar screen. Separately, an analysis in Nature Energy forecasts that global energy demand would be about 40% lower than today by 2050, despite rises in population and income and a growing global economy. The authors found that such a scenario would allow the world to stay within 1.5 C of warming, the aspirational goal set under the Paris Agreement. I don't see how that's possible since we're already real close to 1.5 right now. Anyways, interesting article I'm going to link below. I think that is all I have for you in this video. And I was just, while I was reading all that, I was thinking about, when I was talking about hierarchies and humanitarianism and, the eventual realization that we are all in a circle is, where we would, hopefully like to end up, in that everything, becomes something that helps something else, right? All of life is a web, all of humanity and all of existence and all of the universe is a web, and it's a circle, and the large help the great as well as the great help the small. And why am I saying all this? I don't know. I think that if we can do the right things, and if we can say the right things, and if we can continue the conversation, that all of this hopefully will lead somewhere positive. Am I doing everything that I can to help or mitigate or fix this problem? I don't know. I'm trying. That's, I guess, why I'm here. You know, I have a strong belief and hope in the hive mind. I do believe that having this conversation is extremely helpful. I believe that, you know, the more people that can join this conversation, the more people that can put their minds to this problem, the higher the likelihood that we could find a path out of this problem. I don't know, but you know, the beauty of the hive mind is that, you know, we are all fallible creatures. We all have dumb thoughts. We all do dumb things. We all are, you know, imperfect beings, but we have our strengths, you know, and that's what the hive mind is all about, is, you know, each person adding their strengths to the conversation, or to the, you know, to the fixing or the solution. And hopefully with this ongoing process of thinking about and talking about and just, you know, applying ourselves to this problem, we can, you know, possibly maybe get ourselves to the next step in what needs to be done. Clearly, we need a personal community level answers, as well as we need personal community level answers, as well as political answers. And a few people have asked me about, you know, what would political answers look like? What would the Black Bear Party, you know, platforms be? And I've already spoken about some of these, but I've just been thinking about this, like, what, you know, what does this look like going forward? I mean, I think that a lot of people are ready for different ideas about what government is, or what it is that we should be doing going forward. I think people are ready on the left and the right, and that actually gives me hope. You know, when all seems kind of confusing and dark, and things seem to not have much of a direction, or be a little bit rudderless right now, in the political scope of things, I think that there's actually, I think there's actually a groundswell. I think there's actually a movement of people that are, like, ready to go elsewhere, go in a different direction. I really think that that thought process is alive and well, and did not end with the election of 2016. I think that's an ongoing thing. I think that's a thing that's spurred and helped along by the internet. It is helped along by this exchange of information and this exchange of ideas. So let's continue this exchange of ideas and information as long as we possibly can. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. Hope you'll be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.